I want to ask you something. Do you actually know what a bond is? Not the textbook definition. I mean, do you understand why it matters to your retirement specifically, right now, at your age, with your money? Because here's what I've noticed talking to people in their late 60s and 70s. Almost everyone understands stocks. Everyone has an opinion about the market, but ask someone to explain a bond, and most people go quiet, and that quiet is expensive. Because if you don't understand this one thing, your entire retirement plan has a hole in it that you cannot see. Let me show you exactly what I mean. By the end of this video, you are going to understand the one financial tool that protects retired people better than almost anything else, and why so many smart, careful people are using it completely wrong without even knowing it. Stay with me. This one is worth the full 10 minutes. Here's why bonds confuse people. Stocks are simple to picture. You own a tiny piece of a company. Company does well. Your piece is worth more. Company struggles. Your piece is worth less. Simple story. Easy to follow. Bonds are different, and the way most people hear about them makes it worse. A bond is basically a loan. You lend money to a government or a company, and they pay you interest for a set period of time. Then at the end, they give your original money back. That's it. That's the whole concept. I didn't understand this clearly until I was almost 70. I had bonds in my portfolio for over a decade because a financial advisor told me to buy them. I never once asked why. Why just trusted the man in the suit and moved on with my life. That was a mistake. Not because the advice was bad. Because I didn't understand what I owned or why it mattered to someone in my position. Here's the part that actually matters for you. When you were 35 and the market dropped 30%, that was painful but survivable. You had decades for it to recover. At your age now, that same 30% drop hits completely differently. You don't have decades. You might need that money in the next 5 years, the next 2 years, even next month. This is where bonds do something stocks cannot do. They are dramatically more stable. When the stock market drops sharply, bonds, especially government bonds, typically hold steady or even rise. Think of your retirement money like a house. Stocks are the part of the house that can grow in value over time, your equity, your long-term wealth. Bonds are the foundation. Boring, unglamorous. Nobody brags about their bonds at a dinner party. But the foundation is the only reason the rest of the house doesn't collapse when the ground shakes. Here is the mistake I see constantly in people my age. They either have way too few bonds because stocks felt exciting for 40 years and they never adjusted, or they have way too many because someone scared them after a bad year and they panicked into total safety and gave up all their growth. Both are wrong, and both come from the same root problem. Nobody explained the actual purpose of a bond in plain language. My friend Walter, retired pharmacist, had almost zero bonds at 71 years old. All stocks, all growth. When the market dropped hard one year, he had to sell stocks at the worst possible time, just to cover his living expenses. He sold low. He locked in losses. He never needed to take it. If he had 3 to 5 years of expenses sitting safely in bonds, he never would have needed to touch his stock portfolio during that downturn. He could have waited it out. That's the entire purpose. Bonds are not about getting rich. They are about never being forced to make a bad decision at the worst possible time. Now here's something I wish someone had explained to me sooner, because I assumed for years that a bond was a bond. It is not. There are different kinds, and they behave very differently depending on what is happening in the economy. Government bonds, specifically U.S. Treasury bonds, are about as safe as money gets. The government backs them. They are the foundation of the foundation. When people say bonds are safe, this is usually what they mean. Then there are corporate bonds. You are lending money to a company instead of the government. Slightly more risk, slightly more return, still generally stable, but worth understanding that you are trusting a business, not a country. Then there are municipal bonds, loans to cities and states, often for things like roads, schools, water systems. These sometimes come with tax advantages that can matter quite a bit, depending on your income in retirement. And then there's something people confuse constantly: bond, funds versus individual bonds. An individual bond has a fixed end date. You know exactly when you get your money back and exactly what interest you will earn along the way. It is predictable. It is calm. A bond fund is a basket of many bonds bundled together. It can fluctuate in value day to day, almost like a stock, because the bonds inside it are constantly being bought and sold. A bond fund is not necessarily bad, but it does not behave the same way as a single bond you are holding until it matures. You are have to cut a jerk. I made this mistake myself for years. I thought I owned something stable because it had the word bond in the name. I had no idea I was holding a bond fund that moved up and down with interest rate changes, sometimes losing value in years when I expected total safety. Let me tell you about my friend Dorothy, retired school administrator, 73 years old, careful with money her entire life. Dorothy heard somewhere that bonds were safe, so she put a large chunk of her retirement savings into a bond fund, without asking what kind or how it actually worked. Then interest rates rose sharply a few years back, you might remember this happening, and her safe bond fund dropped almost 12% in value that year. Dorothy called me in a panic. She thought something had gone terribly wrong. She thought she'd been scammed, or that her advisor had made some kind of mistake. Nothing had gone wrong, technically. Bond funds simply lose value when interest rates rise quickly, because the older bonds inside the fund become less attractive compared to new ones being issued at higher rates. Dorothy wasn't wrong to want safety. She was just never taught the difference between a bond fund, and what actually makes each one move. Once she understood the distinction, she made a calm but deliberate decision. She shifted a portion of her safe money into individual treasury bonds she planned to hold until they matured. No more surprises. No more confusion about why the number on the screen moved when nothing seemed to be wrong. She told me afterward that the panic she felt that year wasn't really about the money. It was about not understanding what she owned. And that, more than almost anything else I've talked about on this channel, is the real lesson here. It is not your job to become a financial professional, but it is worth knowing in plain language what you actually own, because confusion is what turns a normal market fluctuation into a sleepless night. You don't have to memorize the difference between every type of bond today. But you do need to ask the question. Call whoever manages your accounts and simply say, "Can you explain in plain language exactly what kind of bonds I own and why?" If the answer doesn't make sense to you, ask again until it does. That is not a foolish question. That is the most important question you can ask at this stage of your life. Time. So how much should you actually have in bonds? There's an old rule of thumb, take your age, and that's roughly the percentage of bonds in your portfolio. At 70, that suggests 70% bonds. I think that rule is a little too simple for most people today, because we are living longer and need our money to last longer too. But here is a simpler way to think about it that actually changed how I sleep at night. Calculate roughly 3 to 5 years of your living expenses, the actual number, the real one, rent or mortgage, food, healthcare, everything. Keep that amount in safe bonds or similarly stable places. That money is your buffer. It means if the stock market crashes tomorrow, you are not touching your stocks for years. You simply live off the safe portion while the rest recovers. That buffer is not about returns. It is about peace of mind, and peace of mind is worth more than an extra percentage point of growth when you're trying to sleep at 3 a.m. Here's why this matters psychologically, not just financially. When you don't have that buffer, every market headline becomes terrifying. Every dip feels like it threatens your ability to pay next month's bills. That fear changes how you live. You stop traveling. You stop spending on things that would genuinely improve your life, not because you can't afford it, because you feel like you can't. But when you have that 3 to 5 year buffer sitting in bonds, something shifts. The market can do whatever it wants. You watch it like weather in another city. Interesting, not threatening. That emotional shift from "I am one bad year away from disaster" to "I have time, I am protected." That shift is worth more than almost any ransom's investment return you could chase. I felt that shift myself. About a year after I finally understood what my bonds were actually for, I stopped checking my accounts every day. I started sleeping through the night again. So here's your homework. First, figure out your actual number. 3 to 5 years of real living expenses. Write it down. Be honest about it. Second, find out what you currently have in bonds versus stocks. So, if you don't know, that's the whole problem we just talked about. Go find out. Third, if your safe bucket doesn't cover that 3 to 5 year number, talk to a financial advisor about gradually shifting toward it, not all at once, not in a panic, gradually, deliberately, on your terms. This is not about chasing the highest return. This is about never being forced to sell something valuable at the worst possible moment. Boring wins in retirement. I've said that before on this channel, and I'll keep saying it because it keeps being true. You don't need to become a bond expert. You just need to understand why this boring, unglamorous part of your portfolio might be the most important decision you make this year. It's not exciting. It won't make a good story at dinner, but it might be the exact thing standing between you and a forced bad decision 5 years from now. Next week, we're talking about something just as practical, the one Social Security mistake that cost people thousands of dollars and almost nobody catches it in time. I'll see you then. Pull up a chair.